All right, welcome back. Today we're diving into something really cool. It's a paper that connects things you would never think belong in the same sentence. We're talking about a superconductor floating over a magnet, a tiny water droplet trapped by sound waves, and, get this, the feeling of lightness that some meditators experience. So what's the secret link? Well, it all boils down to one thing: information. Let's dig in and see how.
So check out this quote. This is the big idea from the paper we're looking at. Levitation can be viewed as systems converting environmental disorder into predictive structure. Whoa. Okay, so what does that even mean? It's basically saying that levitation isn't just about brute force, just pushing up against gravity. It's about a system being smart. It's about taking the chaos from its environment and turn it into something orderly, something predictable. So how on earth does that actually work? Okay, first things first. To really get to the bottom of this, we have to appreciate just how wildly different these examples are. I mean, we're about to connect the quantum world with, everyday physics and even human consciousness. These are realms that are supposed to follow totally different rules, right? So here's the big question for you. What could a floating superconductor, a trapped water droplet, and a super-focused meditator possibly have in common? I mean, think about it. On one hand, you've got bizarre quantum mechanics locking a superconductor in place. Then you've got the sheer physical power of sound waves holding a drop of water in midair. And then you have human consciousness, where just paying attention can literally make someone more stable and feel lighter. It seems impossible that they're related, but they are. All right, here's the big reveal, the secret, the one single idea that ties all of this together. It's not magnetism, it's not acoustics, it's not even biology, not by itself. The key, the secret ingredient, is information. And more specifically, it's all about how each of these systems uses information to predict and then react to what's happening around it. So the core idea we need to wrap our heads around is something called predictive information. And it's actually pretty intuitive. Think about a surfer riding a huge wave. They aren't just reacting to the water as it hits them, right? They'd get wiped out instantly. No, they're constantly looking ahead, reading the wave, predicting its shape and how it's going to break, a split second into the future. That's how they stay on the board. Any system that can predict what's coming next is going to be way, way more efficient with its energy. So it basically breaks down into a simple three-step process. Step 1, the system uses information to predict what's about to happen in its environment. Step 2, based on that prediction, it can redirect its energy in a really efficient way. And finally, step 3, that smartly aimed energy lets it counteract some outside force, like gravity. See, it's not just about having a ton of power. It's about having the smarts to use that power at just the right moment and in just the right way. Okay, so the paper actually puts this into a unifying mathematical rule. And we can call it the two-source rule. It's pretty straightforward, really. It just says that for any system to create lift, it's pulling from two totally different sources of power. The first source is what you'd expect: external power. The raw juice. This is the strength of the magnetic field or the intensity of the sound waves. Let's call this the engine. But here's the thing. A powerful engine is useless on its own, right? You need a driver, and that's the second source, the information rate. This is all about how fast and how well the system can process information to make those predictions. So you've got the engine and you've got the driver. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. A system can't just rely on one or the other. You need both. And the whole thing is governed by that classic weakest link principle. What this means is that the amount of lift you can get is always limited by the bottleneck. It's whichever source is the weaker one. So imagine you've got a massive V8 engine, but the driver is, half asleep. You're not going to win any races. And on the flip side, what if you have the best race car driver in the world, but you stick them in a tiny little go-kart? They're not going to get very far either. The system is only ever as good as its weakest link, whether that's the raw power or the predictive smarts. Okay, so that's the theory. It sounds pretty good, right? But does it actually hold up? Let's go back to our 3 weird examples and see how this two-source rule actually plays out. Let's figure out what information and lift even mean in these totally different worlds. All right, let's break this down. First up, the superconductor. So in this case, what's the information? It's the system's ability to constantly predict and cancel out tiny little random fluctuations, the noise, in the magnetic field around it. And the lift? Well, it's that incredible physical stiffness that just locks it in place against gravity. Okay, next, the acoustic trap. Here, the information is a super fast feedback loop. It's constantly detecting and correcting tiny errors in the sound waves, and that's what creates a stable little pocket of force.
The lift, of course, is the force that's actually holding that water droplet midair. Now for the wildest one, embodied attention. The information here is the brain using all these subtle internal signals, like your heartbeat, your breathing, to anticipate your body's tiny sways before they even happen. And the lift? It's a real, measurable reduction in that sway, a huge increase in stability, a steadiness that people often describe as, you guessed it, a feeling of lightness. So there you have it. We've just connected 3 completely different phenomena with one single, kind of elegant idea, which is cool.
But you might be asking, so what? Why does this matter? Well, the implications here are actually way bigger than you might think.
Because let's be real, this isn't just about levitation.
What we're looking at here is a recipe. It's a fundamental recipe for creating stability out of chaos. It's a blueprint for how any system, whether it's biological, computational, or physical, can create order and stay stable in a world that's constantly changing and messy. It tells us that the power to predict the future, even just a tiny fraction of a second ahead, is one of the key ingredients for building structure out of pure disorder.
So if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. Any system, I don't care what scale we're talking about, if it can predict its environment, it can then redirect energy to counteract disorder and create stability. Prediction isn't passive. It's not just watching things happen. It's an active, physical process. It lets systems literally build themselves up and hold themselves together against all the forces that are trying to tear them apart.
And that brings us to the final, mind-bending thought. This paper shows that predictive information, just being smart about the future, can be used to fight back against the fundamental force of gravity. So it leaves us with this huge, provocative question. If prediction can conquer gravity, what other forces can it overcome? What other kinds of chaos out there in the world and even inside ourselves could we learn to conquer with it?